We're all ready. Good evening, folks. I'll call this committee of the whole. Call the committee of the whole to order. It is 5 o'clock. And the town of Smithers likes to acknowledge that we are living on the territory, the unceded territory of the Gidim Den clan and the Wet'suwet'en people. And it's with gratitude that we know we live, work, and play here. And the public is notified that this meeting is being recorded and webcast, a notice of which is on the bulletin board outside these chambers. Council, you have an agenda. Motion to approve, please. Councillor Raven. We're in committee. No seconder. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And are we doing delegation? Sugar.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It appears that the delegation is not available to join us right now. We will attempt to get in contact with them and confirm their availability.
Mr. Schroeder, were you expecting them in person or virtually?
We were expecting them in person.
Okay, so we'll just we'll roll with that. If they're in the next little while, we'll adjust if council is okay with that. Let me catch up then. So then, Mr. Gore, Mr. Schroeder, for now, I wonder, and with council's permission, if we can just vary the agenda and move ahead to 6-2. And that way, if the delegation is a few minutes late, if council's okay, we could still hear them. I'm hearing a doorbell now, so.
Certainly, Your Worship. I believe that would, apologies, I do see a hand from Councillor Ray.
Councillor Ray.
Sorry, Your Worship, I was just wondering if we should skip ahead to 6-3 and 6-4 instead, because 6-2 kind of depends on what we hear from the delegation.
Okay, so with permission, if council's okay with it, let's just go straight ahead to the communications plan. Okay, I'm not seeing any strong yeses or nos, so let's just do that. So we'll jump ahead to 6-3. Communications. We got the right page. Okay, so we have the report from Ms. LeBlanc, who is here with us, and it's about providing some feedback. Ms. LeBlanc, did you want to guide us through first? What's your pleasure?
Yeah, I can guide you through the draft communications plan and then open up for questions and feedback after. Okay, so just to get started, this is a 2025 to 2027 communications plan. So council identified the development and implementation of a communication strategy as a key initiative under organizational excellence in the 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities plan. The draft communications plan, this is created in-house. The plan focuses on enhancing communication with residents, community partners, businesses, visitors, and staff with the overarching goals of ensuring transparency, fostering engagement, and improving the dissemination of information. So the team, as you're all aware, I am the communications and engagement officer with the town. This is just an overview of some of my responsibilities. The key responsibilities are the planning, development, and implementation of external and internal communication initiatives, social media, website management, media relations, maintaining the town brand standards, as well as crisis communication and issue management. Throughout this plan, we talk about the audiences. Here I've identified a few external and internal audiences. We have residents and property owners. This extends to the media, visitors, regional community partners, businesses and investors. And then internal, we have town council. We have employees, contractors and consultants, fire rescue, and the RCMP. So as an initial step, we did undertake a SWOT analysis. This is our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as it relates to town communications. So I'll just go over a few strengths here. We have direction from council and senior staff to establish a culture of organizational excellence and a strong communication strategy. We have a highly engaged social media following. Just to put it into perspective, we have 2,600 followers. The city of Vancouver has 84,000 followers, and we get double to triple the engagement on our posts. So we have a very engaged social media following. Some weaknesses that we are looking at, we do have disjointed engagement and promotions from hired contractors. We've made great strides, but we do have some inconsistent communication procedures from individual departments, and we also do have limited resources. Opportunities, again, I highlight that we have a very active community on social media. Recent surveys like the communication survey show we have a strong desire from the public to provide feedback. And then we also have a very positive and open relationship with the local media outlets. Some threats, social media can create information overload. There's a lot of influx of information on social media and other platforms, and there's a risk of our messages always getting lost. We also have declining engagement in traditional media. So where we are, just to highlight a few things that have happened over the past year when it comes to communications for the town of Smithers. We have centralized communications underneath my position, which has created a singular voice for messaging, clear dissemination of information, and consistent branding across the organization. In September, council adopted the town's first social media policy. And coming to the council meeting next week will be the first report on the brand refresh project. So some guiding principles that were followed in this plan. This came through our research and ongoing evaluation of our current communications. This plan is audience focused. It's inclusive. We're working on building a culture of proactive communication rather than reactive, as well as fostering engagement and upholding public trust. And I'm going to go into how we're going to achieve those guiding principles. So I'll touch on our communications toolkit. These are the tools that we have. Currently, we have digital, which is our social media, our official website, and our online surveys. We do have opportunities when it comes to our digital toolkit through e-newsletter, notification systems, and dedicated engagement platforms that we can explore using. We also have print, which is our mailouts. Right now, we do tax mailouts as well as business license renewals, garbage mailouts. We have lots of brochures and leaflets, fact sheets and signage, traditional media, posters, and community relations. We have our media relations, our engagement sessions, and our community events. So now our goals and objectives throughout this communications plan. So the first goal is to expand awareness of town projects and decision-making. So I'm just going to go over a few of these actions. They all are aligned in the appendix as well with the timeline. So some key initiatives are to publish council highlights on Facebook and the website following the regular council meetings. So currently we do a pre-council meeting, what to expect, and this will be a follow-up of what the decisions that were made and what some of the discussions were. We're looking at developing a newsletter, which will be online and print distribution. This will likely be quarterly going out to the public. And then we are also looking at implementing a new process for public budget engagement. Goal number 2 is to enhance transparency and accessibility. So we're looking at building trust in the town by showcasing municipal achievements, highlighting the people behind the services, and fostering connections between staff and the community. We're going to use inclusive language that is free from words, phrases, or tones that reflect prejudice, stereotypes, or discriminatory views. We're also looking at undertaking a website audit and upgrade project using the current web content accessibility guidelines. And we're also going to take ownership by encouraging all staff and council members to actively listen to citizens, incorporate their feedback, and communicate information on behalf of the town. And goal number 3 is to increase engagement and public participation in the town's decision-making process. So the first proposed action is to incorporate the International Association for Public Participation spectrum of public participation, which you can see in the picture there. So that's to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower residents. We're going to reach people through online and in-person surveys. So we saw through our research that most people want to contribute their feedback through surveys, both internally and externally. And then we're also looking at highlighting what we heard reports and how responses directly impact the decision-making process through council and through the organization. Goal number 4 is to build strong internal communications. So we're going to continue having a placeholder for ongoing or upcoming communication needs at senior management meetings, so the entire organization is aware of what the communications are going out. We're looking at informing employees of matters affecting the town before informing the public. And we are also developing a quarterly staff newsletter detailing staff achievements, milestones, events, updates on projects, and learning opportunities. And we're going to continue to utilize surveys to gather staff feedback. And goal number 5 is to create a consistent brand and image for the town of Smithers. So we're going to centralize all creation, review, and approval of external promotions or advertisements to the engagement and communications officer, as well as creating standardized internal documents and include orientation on brand guidelines for staff and consultants. And then it just goes into the appendix here with a bit of a guideline of when we can look at having these things completed. That's 2025 to 2027. A lot of these things are ongoing as we've already started to implement them over the year. Yeah, so open to feedback and questions.
Thanks, Ms. LeBlanc. And I can't help myself. That was very clearly communicated. So thank you. Get there before Councillor Raven does. Okay, council, comments, feedback, questions, Councillor Raven.
So thank you so much. I know I've received a significant amount of positive feedback about the improvement to our communications, which has been really, really good. One suggestion is for the accessibility. So I appreciated that you're going to look at the CNIB standards. If we could also think about audio, so for like a poster have a QR code where it could read, because sometimes visual disabilities you actually can't see. So having an audio option would be fantastic.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Anyone else? Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Marshall, through to staff. Excellent work. I've seen many, many communication plans over the course of my career, and this is one of the best I've ever seen. So great work. I love that it was really specific and super easy to digest. So I'm excited to see what the public has to say. And on that note, do you foresee an opportunity for us to engage with the public, let's say after our first year of implementation of the plan, just to see if they feel that we've reached some of the objectives that you have? Like, are we effectively communicating? Thank you.
Ms. LeBlanc.
So through the mayor to Councillor Patterson, we are looking at doing yearly surveys. Like we did one for the communications plan, and looking at having that yearly to gauge how are we doing, what can be improved on, what other communications are people looking for in the community.
Councillor Ray, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just a couple of comments. First of all, it is very well done. And it seems very ambitious, but I'm assuming since you wrote it you're going to be the one implementing it. I'm sure that you feel that it's doable by your position. So for once, I feel like maybe we're not asking too much. I had more of a question about the IAP2 spectrum under Empower, where it says to place final decision making in the hands of the public. How do you see that shaking out? Because that's actually what the public has empowered us to do after we've heard from them.
Ms. LeBlanc.
Yeah, so with this spectrum, a lot of it isn't quite related to local government as it stands with like a council. So it's kind of broad speaking. But I think the empowerment would be showing that these are the stats that we pulled from like the surveys, whatever it is, people's feedback, and then bringing that forward to council and then council making those decisions on behalf of residents.
Thanks. And then I just wanted to make a general comment about the website. I don't think we quite got what we asked for last time, and that's fair. But I just don't want to get kind of into an ever-ending cycle of $50,000 websites. So just if there's a way that we can, I don't know enough about building a website. Obviously, you know more, but just so that if there are things that the public are finding confusing or whatever, we can take feedback and it's able to be fixed without redoing the website. If that's possible.
Yeah, so the intention with the website audit is to do that internally, to just kind of go through the pages. There's a lot of pages. We've been slowly trying to get rid of them that are dated from, 2020 that might not be relevant. So just going through each one, clearing up, making it plain language, but doing that all in-house.
And then the last comment, and I don't use our website much, so it may be already there, is just to make sure that there is an archive of our video recordings, so that somebody can go back even a year and say, hey, Councillor Ray, you said this, and we can actually check.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Ms. LeBlanc, is that a part of the plan? I think that's been a long held desire by a couple of us anyway.
It wasn't part of the plan, but I can definitely add that. Right now they are kind of archived on our Facebook page, so they are there. A little bit trickier to find them, but that's definitely something I can add to put them onto the webpage.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think this might be tangential, but some time ago, we had looked at other ways for doing a live stream as well. I'll just leave it with that. You know, of course, not everyone's on Facebook, so I'll just leave it there. Anyone on this side? Councillor Elliott.
I just want to say thank you, Ms. LeBlanc. Really good report, good plan. I've had many good responses to what the social media responses to people, and this is proof that you can do it really well if it's not off the side of somebody's desk and it's someone dedicated to the job. So I really appreciate that, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Leonard.
I also wanted to say it was great, clear, concise plan. So thank you for your work on that. I have a sort of a question. Well, it is a question on this communications plan and the branding versus the economic development plan and the branding referred to in there. So should we do that right now, or should we wait until that's presented?
I think ask the question. We've got our communication.
When I was
person
reading
here.
through both, I'm just kind of confused, and to be honest, my thoughts are more in line with what's in the communication plan. And I sort of got the impression in the economic development plan that there was going to be a complete overhaul of branding, which I thought that's not what was presented to council earlier, and that it was just sort of aligning our current logos and communication and getting everybody using the same logo. So I just wanted some clarification on that.
Well, we have both staff here. So Ms. LeBlanc or Ms. Barrowman, whoever feels like jumping in.
Yeah, I can speak to the brand refresh. So it is, a refresh of our brand that will be used by economic development. A lot of it is focused on the economic development side of it, having a refresh brand that we can, have in magazines, that we can have, sell to businesses, kind of our new image. And a lot of that is about economic development. But I'm sure Jill can maybe speak to a little bit of what's in the economic development plan when it comes to that.
Go ahead, Ms. Barrowman.
Thank you very much. The economic development plan touches on the brand refresh, and it's exactly what Sam was saying, is just to refresh the brand and improve our corporate identity to be able to market the community in a more modern way. And the brand refresh did come out of Read Up economic development funding from the budget.
Which is, and that's what I remember. There was funding tied to it. And maybe, you've mentioned that we're going to see it next week. My concern, as usual, is always about cost. So if we're completely overhauling the brand, that's a significant cost to the municipality in terms of, letterhead and everything else, and changing websites. So I just, maybe that's a comment for next week. I don't really know, but.
If there's a response, we might as well have it. Either Mr. Dewar or Ms. LeBlanc.
Yeah, so it is just a brand refresh. We're not completely getting rid of our logo. We're just having a refreshed logo. We're having refreshed brand standards. A lot of it focusing on digital and economic development. And then we're going to slowly phase that in. So it's not going to be a full rebrand. We're not getting rid of all the decals on cars. We're not getting rid of all the signs. It's just going to slowly be phased in as things need to be replaced. So there's not a large cost.
That's perfect. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Raven, and then I'll go.
Sorry, this just touches on, we're getting the public feedback. I remember when we had the survey last time, I got some feedback where people weren't happy with the communication from the town. And then when I talked to them about it, they knew the projects that were going on, but what they actually weren't happy with was council decisions. So I'm just wondering if there's a way in that survey to kind of tease that out where it's like, it's not necessarily that you haven't been communicated with, you just didn't like the outcome. That's a very tall order. I don't know if it's possible, but just putting that out there where even if you don't like the information, it is communication.
Yeah, and I think maybe having that council decisions after it's been made might clarify a little bit of that. But that is always an issue that comes up.
Okay, just a few things for me. I'm just going to go through page by page because some of this is in response to some of the things you said. So I'm just on your page of SWOT analysis and wondering if you could just speak a little bit more to what you think the opportunities are for speaking to those, communicating to those who are the hardest to reach, which are the people without social media accounts in the face of sort of diminishing traditional media.
Yeah, so one of the things we're looking at is getting into the community when it comes to engagement. So setting up where people are, that's a big focus, kind of finding those spots, like, maybe going to Bulkley Valley Lodge, going to in front of Bugwood out on Main Street, kind of communicating people with where they are. There is a lot of people in our community who aren't active on Facebook. So we're really looking for those alternate avenues to reach them. And there are a lot of people too who we found use traditional media. So evaluating that as well, if it's worth it for us to have all those things in the newspaper as well.
Cool, thank you. And then when you were talking about developing the newsletter, both online and print distribution, and you said quarterly, and I just wondered if you'd given thought to, if it's quarterly, how you prioritize the content, if it's, the issue of the moment, because a quarter is a long time sometimes. So just, I don't know that I have a real direction there, but I'm curious on how the content would actually be prioritized.
I think a lot of the content will be more high level to projects that we have ongoing rather than like, each council meeting, what's to come or decisions that have been made. It'll be more high level. These are the projects. These are events that are upcoming, things like that. More of a high level look at things happening in the community.
Thank you. And informing employees before making things public. And I just wondered if there was a standard in what that time lag is.
We don't have a standard yet, but we have heard that from staff that sometimes they find out through Facebook or they find out through the public what's happening. So we're just looking at communicating those things out so all staff can be prepared for any questions that come in.
Okay, and I think this might be my last one. This is on consistent info, so under goal 5, and it's centralize all creation, review, and approval of external promotions and advertisements. Maybe I'm hearing it differently as I say it out loud, because I wondered about the technical information. So if there is something coming out of a specific department where there is technical info that must be accurate, and at the same time, we're trying to look after the messaging, how you imagine that being sawn off. So we get the sometimes very difficult technical information delivered in a way that people might find friendly.
Yeah, so a lot of the technical legislative stuff has to go out the way it's worded for a reason, but just kind of that's more focused on, like, we have a lot of external, say, contractors doing work, having that all come through the engagement and communications officer. So it's not so disjointed. So they're using our colors, they're using our messaging, they're using our voices.
Okay, thanks. That was my last comment. Last question. So yeah, thanks again. It does look great. I think there's an energy attached to those communications that is catchy and it's nice to see. So definitely appreciate that. So just one last glance.
I'll just add one thing, the next step. So following this review and feedback, we're going to be putting the plan out to the public for a 2-week consultation for any review and comments that the public has. And then it will be presented back to council for final approval, likely at the end of February.
Okay, so if any of us at the table think of something else, we can send you the info. Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. Okay. So perhaps then we'll just step back and we have our delegation here. So maybe I can invite folks to come to the delegation table. So the people from Edge come on forward. And I think you've done this before, but if the circle on the mic stand is it. And if you press that, your mic is live. And for the record, please just introduce yourself with who you are and where you're from. And you have a few minutes for the delegation.
Great. Thanks, and sorry I was late, so thank you for flipping the agenda there to make that work for me, running from meeting to meeting. My name is Sarah Wright. I'm the program director of Edge Learning Center, and this is Leanne, and she's one of our board members with us tonight. I have done this a few times. This is so my question to you before I begin is keeping in mind your time. You all got this letter out through the agenda. Would you like me to go through and read it? Or is this the opportunity where we get to, jump to the part where we can collaborate on the requests and the questions? Do I have time to go through and read it and then go for it?
You have the time to read it. I'm not sure you have to read it. Probably,
Question.
what won't happen is a back and forth.
Right.
So the meeting is not set up that way. So I think the things that are key to you, perhaps emphasize, council does have an opportunity to ask you questions for clarity.
Mhm.
So I think this is the moment to make sure that you are sure we're hearing your perspective. And if we don't have clarity, we can ask you those questions, and then it will come back to council for consideration,
Mhm.
either today for a recommendation to ourselves at a council meeting, or whatever the decision at the table is.
Great.
But this, make sure we hear from you. This is that moment in time. So.
Great. And in reverse, I was here and hoping to be able to get more clarity around the decision of the use of the basement. And mostly our main request here is it feasible for us to be able to look at sharing it with emergency services? Am I completely out of line to say, hey, if it's emergency response space that's to be utilized in emergency requests, why can't we make that available? Why can't we make the whole building available if they need it when those timeframes come? But does that mean that it has to be this single use only in emergency places available, and then not be another area in our community that we can still lean into and try to serve and meet those needs? So I'll jump into that frame of it to our requests in that. We're here realizing that, we've come a few times with really great big goals. We have a heart and a desire to be able to meet many community needs. Those highlighted needs are youth programming and providing a drop-in space, particularly coming through and working hand in hand with the Youth Foundry Committee. They've been meeting at Edge, and in the meetings that we were participating in, the majority of the youth put that as their preference of choice of location in the community if they could dream of a space. So I have pie in the sky dreams of being able to see a foundry here. But even in the meantime where we don't have a foundry here, I'm continuing to support that committee, and I'd love to be able to give them little bits of this is what we've got, and we can keep going with what we've got. The other frame of what we're looking at is being able to open up that space for creative arts and multipurpose use. So in light of, I've talked to Nicole at the Creation Station, in light of those pieces, we've collaborated on some NID Day programming and some spring break camps, and looking at ways that we can work more together and be able to utilize the spaces that we have. I would like to be able to see us grow a commercial kitchen there and have some grants in place to slide that in. So far, it seems like these are all lofty goals, but the thing that's held us back from being able to actually action them and move forward is that we can't get a solid answer from the town. So the lease negotiations have been going on a long time. And it was like, we can't get upstairs. Now upstairs isn't a thing. So the conversation around the basement and being able to move into that has been more than a year. And then it's like out of nowhere, now it's not an option. We're at a place where we are, capped out in our capacity to grow based on space. All of our spaces and timeframes are solidly booked. And also at that place and time within the business structure of knowing that in order to stay sustainable and be able to work with things like rent increases to the capacity of 71%, the only way to do that is to scale the organization and diversify our membership. And that means that we need more space in order to do that. So my request here tonight is to know if it's possible for us to look at a collaboration where the emergency support services could still use that space to store some of their things, have it in an operational space as they need, but can we share it? Can we look at some sort of calendar in the way of that? When emergencies happen, we can switch up our needs and make that work. We're really good at collaborating. My other request in there was that revitalization and renovation project. We all know that that's a really rough space. It needs a lot. And I would like continued support from the town to be able to work with them in finding grants and make that be a space that could be served for the community. And the last resort concessions within that is if we can't figure out how to make that work and knowing that the basement isn't an option for us, then we are asking for the ability to retain the small back room in the basement for our storage needs and the permission to build a greenhouse and a storage shed on the property so that that can continue to support our community programming and need for storage. That I think is all from me outside of reading the letter, but I think you guys had the opportunity to do that. So I'll just give you the floor to ask me questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Dan, for being here. Before I look to the table, I wasn't sure if there was anything from staff. Are we good or anything that you wanted to add? Okay. Council, any questions or comments back? Did I see your hand? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you so much for coming tonight, both of you. So Her Worship sort of explained the process, so we'll talk about it at our next regular meeting of council. So I'll just ask a quick question while you're here. Could you just describe to me just a little bit of your relationship with the Foundry? And then you had mentioned in your letter, the art gallery, just because I recently had a presentation from both, including the Foundry, which I understand they do have an established Foundry here in Smithers, but yeah, it sounds like you have maybe a relationship with both. And I'm just curious, are you sharing the space with them both? Or if you could just describe a little bit the relationship, that would help me. Thank you.
Just a collaboration. So the Edge Learning Center, I co-wrote the grant with Mark DeHoog and the steering committee. And then the contract that we have with the Foundry is simply just a 1-year pilot that allows the youth to be a committee that's branded by the Foundry. Doesn't come with money. It doesn't come with building. It doesn't come with any promises. It just comes with the opportunity for youth to be youth-led and to elevate Foundry virtual services and those things. So just on the back end of the administration part, I supported the grant process. I'm a parent of youth and have wanted to see this happen for a long time. And Edge is just providing space for them. Yeah. So they do their meetings at Edge, and then I've been able to provide some administrative pieces when picked up pizza for their party, those kinds of things. And then as far as the art gallery goes, just another partnership and collaboration where we've been able to look at ways to do programming together. And again, another way that we could offer spaces where they can offer some facilitators, we can offer more facilitators and just marry up their strengths with ours. You bet.
Anyone else? Okay, so I think, Ms. Wright, we've got the information. We're going to hear from ESS tonight as well. We have a staff report here. Just to reiterate, this is a committee meeting, so decisions made at this meeting are recommendations back to ourselves as council, so things are ratified at council. Maybe just one you know, perhaps it's a curiosity or it's how I'm feeling at this moment. I think one of the challenges that we're feeling at this table a lot is we also have limited capacity in terms of space, and we have ever expanding demands, and some of those come to us externally. Some of them they're not bad things, but when we think about the increasing needs of ESS, some of those are coming externally as a result of some of the you know, the big events that we see out in the world with floods and fires. And so the province, through the municipal organization, the Union of BC Municipalities, has created a pathway for the province to respond to what it sees as big provincial issues that are felt in community, and provides a linkage. So saying we have an expectation communities will respond. We're going to provide some resources. Sometimes they come through UBCM, and at the local end, we kind of have to uptake that. And so that's not all bad, but it does mean that we face an expanded sort of service structure. And then we look at what do we own. And so, you know, we're feeling some pressure in the community for that, whether it's dealing with the building that is now the Creation Station, which is our building, whether it's Ranger Park or other buildings that we own, as we try to manage the services that we are mandated to provide and the services that we're trying to work with residents on for the services and the, you know, the good work that organizations like yours do. So there's definitely a tension there in how do we meet all of those things? We only own so many buildings. And so the opportunity is to use our buildings, or for us to go out and either buy or lease space for the services that we provide. Those aren't easy. So I'm just giving you that little bit of a landing pad, that those are some of the things that we will tussle with. So, and this is not the first time in my time on council where we've been looking at how do we serve what citizens would like to have. Sometimes it's an affordability issue for citizens groups as well, because where we might say, well, we have to go out into the community and either buy or build, that's the same opportunity you have, and cost and affordability becomes it. So we have this global responsibility for the services that we provide, a responsibility for the taxpayers for maintaining costs, and an obligation to work with residents groups and citizens groups like yours to figure out how do we do it together. So I just wanted you to have a little bit of that when it comes for us to decide what we're going to do. All of those things, those pressures are all there. How do we meet all those needs the best way we can, and still maintain as much affordability as we can to the residents and the taxpayers? So that'll be rolling through my brain as we discuss this going forward. So just so that you have that as a bit of background as well. Okay.
I also in that letter, need, because that's just such a moot point. And really, we went back and forth at our board meeting about whether we even come here tonight, right? But in the end, even if we came here tonight and the answer is no, coming here tonight to remind you that the work we're doing is important is a win, and that we're doing good work and meeting those needs, and that we still have a big vision to continue to meet community needs. So we'll do that regardless of whether that decision is for or against us, but we'd also always love the opportunity to work alongside.
Thanks for that. That is what makes this a great place, is that we have people with a lot of spirit and a lot of energy creating cool stuff for communities. So thank you for that as well. So for both of you. Okay, my last look around the table. And otherwise, we thank you. You're welcome to stay as we discuss, or you're welcome to have your evening back as you wish. Okay. Find my way back to where we are. So council, should we just go back in order here then? So we'll go to 6.1 and we'll keep Ms. Berriman just sitting where she's sitting until we get to that item. So I'm just going to look for any dramatic disagreement. Otherwise, I'm going to go to 6.1. Okay. Pardon me? 6.2, thanks. Yeah, you're right. 6.2. So that's where we are. So got there. Remember that night when it was like
Apologies.
Item
Mayor.
18.2 is 15.1 and 14. Yeah, that one. Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you, Mayor. There is a recommendation item under item 6.1 that council directs staff to prepare a report with more information.
Okay, so let's just deal with that. So the recommendation is there. I think my gut reaction was to hear everything, but let's 6.1, the recommendation is there from staff that we get a report with more information. What's your pleasure, council? Councilor Ray?
Sorry, your worship, I'll move that we postpone 6.1 until after we've discussed 6.2.
Thank you. That was a motion. We don't need a seconder, but we do need to vote. Any discussion is only limited to the when, so it's until after. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so that's postponed until after the next one. Thank you. So now let's go to 6.2. So we have the report from Matt Herzog, who was here with us along with Chief DeVries. So we do have the recommendation there. I'm just going to look to Mr. Herzog if there's something you wanted to add before we open it up to the table.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yep. This is the report that you have in front of you is the full report on both the emergency support services, use of the basement of Ranger Park, and again, second part being the second floor for the Emergency Operations Center. Both kind of work together and tie in together for providing services during emergencies and disasters. Like it says in the report, both the programs, the fire service, emergency support services, and the Emergency Operations Center equipment have expanded over the last few years, and we're looking to expand into a space that's going to allow us to continue to operate, particularly as we move into the future with the possibility of having the regional emergency support services program. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Herzog. I just a couple of comments and then we'll go to the table. I think one of the things that's confusing to me about the building is that, you know, during my years at this table, we've gone from considering tearing the building down because we were told it wasn't worth investing in, to making some space available for various not-for-profit groups and including search and rescue for a while. We provided other space for search and rescue elsewhere with an intention of moving away from emergency services. It just strikes me, this piece has always been here, that it is the highest geographical piece. So obviously that's not changed. But it presents in a confusing way for me that over time, the building was viewed as one that we ought to consider demolishing, to now we're filling it up with not-for-profits and town services, perhaps regional services. So I am having trouble like letting all that digest, because my understanding of building code and needs is that's only become more stringent over my time here. So I just have a bit of a struggle there. You don't have to answer that, but it's part of what's affecting how I'm feeling right now. So just with that preamble, I'll just go to the table if someone has comments or thoughts here. Councillor Ray.
I'll try and answer that a little bit. As is referenced in the report, there was an approval from council to do EOC upstairs, but there was never any money to do it. Without putting words in the mouth of the staff, for me, what's changed is RBA money. And as far as knocking it down, I remember bringing that up myself, because there was no demand for it. It looked like BV Search and Rescue was going to be moving out quickly. The building was going to be empty. There was really no community demand for it, but the community's changed a lot in the last 10 years. There's energy for folks like our delegation. Something like the Creation Station wasn't around then. So buildings that we didn't have use for, now we do. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that the childcare building can only be one story, because we could have made it 3, put EOC and all the towers and everything up on top of it. We could have had second floor for other things, but we can't. So what we're left with is a building that in an ideal world, we probably wouldn't use it. It's going to cost a lot to bring it up to code, but hopefully we're getting grants for a lot of this stuff. So, you know, that's kind of, I think, how we got to where we're needing to use that building. I never thought when I got on council that we'd need the building across the parking lot for staffing. And yet here we are. So, you know, perhaps it's fortunate that we didn't knock down the building in hindsight, but we are where we are. I do have a question because to me, I'm looking in the resource considerations and, you know, it says funding construct an ESS training and operations facility would be sought from a bunch of different places, but the last one is leveraging funds from the town of Smithers reserve funds. And I'm okay because we own the building, using town of Smithers funds to bring things up to snuff. But ESS was always meant to be separate. And we're fortunate to have you, Mr. Herzog, and the department meshing, and I can see where it's getting confusing. I've been in the storage facility, but really it's a provincial program. And so if we're going to do renovations to the basement, then I would expect that the province would be paying rent for it. And I don't, is that something that's a possibility? Because I don't think they've been renting our space in our storage building. But, and I'm not saying that I don't think we should do it, but maybe I'm saying when council goes to UBCM, we're going to point out to the minister responsible that this is supposed to be separate and paid for by the province. So sorry about the ramble. The question in there is there any money for rent?
Councilor Ray, could you just repeat the last part? I didn't hear it. Is there any?
Is there money from the province or
Correct.
through the grants for actual rent of space?
Mr. Herzog.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Ray, through Mayor. Not that I know of. The province doesn't provide any funding for renting facilities of any kind. The legislation states that each local government is responsible for an emergency support services program, whichever that may be or however it's managed. And it's up to the local government to decide at what level they want to have an emergency support services program and to what extent they provide funding for it.
Okay, thanks. And that doesn't change how good of a job we're doing and how happy we are out to the ESS, but I don't mind pushing back on the province, even if we decide to put it in there and ask for rent after. So yeah, I think you said a lot to our delegation. I think it's, you know, there are two separate recommendations and they do go together. So I get that. But speaking to the EOC, I think given the proximities to the railway and the proximity to wildfire, potential wildfire is probably going to come from the mountainside. It really makes sense to have an EOC that's further away and on the other side of town. So I definitely support that. And, you know, having seen the SS storage in the fire department storage building, I really think that it is time that it's separated and more readily available when it's needed instead of having to pull it out of fire department stuff and vice versa.
Thanks, Councilor Ray. Mr. Dewar, I think you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to build on the comments from Mr. Herzog. So it's anticipated right now without specific quotes that the costs of developing the EOC on the top floor would be substantially higher than the renovation costs for developing out the ESS facility or the space on the bottom floor or in the basement. And so it's anticipated that the ESS space could be created at a fairly I guess minimized cost compared to most renovations that we're looking at. And so I think that's one of the big differences between the two different projects.
Go ahead, Councilor Ray.
Sorry. So I think part of my reason for my comments is the town is also responsible for ongoing maintenance of the building. So that's why we charge rent to those that do it, is we're trying to just do it on a cost recovery basis. If we put ESS in the basement, there's an opportunity cost there of the amount of rent that somebody else might be paying, as well as the opportunity cost of their programming. So And again, it's not a reason not to do it, but it is a reason to go to the province and say, you know, once upon a time, we didn't have to do this. Because having been here from the beginning, this is what I've feared from the beginning, is that it, especially because we've done such a good job, that it becomes an integral part, and then the province just kind of starts slowly washing their hands of it. So yeah, I'll stop there. I support the recommendations, but I think we need follow-up.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Okay, I have Councillor Patterson, then Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. So thank you to Mr. Herzog. And I just want to say that I support the recommendation, but just both recommendations, pardon me, just a couple comments. So I just want to thank ESS for the work that they do, the thankless work that they do. And just given the little space that you have been doing it to date, I think is exemplary. And I think the unfortunate thing that a lot of our community doesn't think about is the need for that space until we need it, until those situations happen. And I think a lot of that work that you do is behind the scenes. People don't see it because, again, you're doing it in such a small space. So I want to say just that given the current changes that we see, and the extreme changes that we see due to climate change, and I would argue the climate crisis, that we're going to continue to see those extreme weather events in our community, including the fire that we saw in recent history just on the side of the ski hill. So I just want to say that I'll always prioritize ESS over others, again, because I just think people don't think about it until unfortunately we need it. And I hope that we don't need it. But I do recognize that there's a lot of work that you put in behind the scenes around training that, you know, other individuals might not see. It's a full-time job. I'd also be interested in funding opportunities that will come over the next year, 2 years, or as long as my term on council, just around what upgrades might be needed. I assume once you spend more time in that building, there's going to be things that are brought forward. So I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts or considerations around that. And I know we're going to talk about it at a future meeting, but just while we're sort of on the subject of Ranger Park building specifically, I'd be interested in sort of having a conversation around finding supports or maybe utilizing town staff to coordinate with those non-for-profits that are currently using that space, that are no longer able to use that space, to find alternatives. So for example, you know, we mentioned that we're building a new childcare facility. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to coordinate with those individuals who are building that to say, we have a number of non-for-profit groups that are supporting children and other vulnerable populations in our community who are looking for multi-purpose space, or other places in the community. There are many, many places in our community, and I'm very proud at how we all seem to be able to come together and find solutions when we need to. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Raven.
So I would be remiss if I don't bring up the Creation Station, because that is definitely the first place that my brain went. And just knowing as council liaison that a sublease doesn't work for them, they wouldn't be able to apply for grants. So I just wanted to highlight that. I definitely understand the struggle, but this really is like the ideal location. So the highest geographical point and outside the CN location. And I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration often enough, is we do obviously have a risk for a train emergency, and that blast zone is quite a zone. So being able to have a permanent space outside of that is very important. I support the recommendation, understanding that everyone is constrained for space. Councillor Ray already touched on it, where I recognize the town reserve funds, and that kind of made me tense up a bit. And I was going to ask the question is if RBA is eligible for this kind of expense to leverage, because I would be far more interested in using RBA money than town reserves. And then building on what Councillor Ray said is the province does download again and again. They've changed the amount of training that's required. And then RESS always goes above and beyond, and even implementing their regional partnership model that they've done. I think it is something that we could bring to the ministers and say, as we have a group that has gone above and beyond, and they could use some additional support.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Just a comment in there. I guess I don't view them much differently when we're saying town reserves or RBA, because they're all going to be reserves. And we have seen over the past few years how we're able to utilize various reserves to kind of backstop or fill holes. So Mr. Dewar can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem that either a building reserve, a building fund, or RBA, once we get through that funding, because it's you know, it can be used for infrastructure, that there's multiple ways through that if we choose to go that way. Is that true? This is your time to let me know if I'm misspeaking.
No, generally you're correct that RBA just has to meet a certain set of criteria for spending.
Councillor Ray, and then I have some comments as well, so.
This is specific to the RBA, that the more stuff that we use RBA to pay for things that have been downloaded to us, A, it doesn't cost our taxpayers for the downloading, but B, when we go to negotiate the next RBA, we can say, these are all the things you've asked us to do. We've essentially used your money from the RBA to do it, and we need it again. I think that's the biggest argument for me for using RBA money for stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I wasn't actually expressing an opinion one way or the other. I was simply saying there's more than one way to do it. So sorry if it seemed like I was choosing one. Councillor Leonard, you're trying to get in there.
I just had a question around costs, of course. So the resource considerations you've mentioned where you would get funding for the construction of the centers. My thought, and forgive my ignorance, because maybe I should have known this. So the Bulkley ESS is a regional organization. So what sort of support do those other districts and municipalities provide for us operating here in Smithers?
Mr. Herzog, if you know, I mean, we have some information on that as well, but go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Leonard through Mayor. Right now, at this moment, it's Smithers and Telkwa, which is the regional program. Telkwa contributes to the wage for the ESS director and provides some operational funds to the overall program. The future project we're pursuing with other local governments in the area, again, would they would also be contributing to the wage for the ESS director to allow more time for work to be done, and they're contributing to the operational costs. Furthermore, they're also providing their portion of the Provincial Emergency Support Services grant through this Community Emergency Preparedness Fund through UBCM. So that's where that funding is going toward if we go toward that full regional program.
So just building on that and what, you know, just to Councillor Ray's point on rent, you know, maybe I am in support of these recommendations, but maybe some future consideration could be thought through on maybe it's not rent, but maybe support from those included districts and municipalities towards the program on an ongoing basis. Because we're providing the building.
Mr. Dewar.
And I'll let Mr. Herzog correct me if I'm wrong in this statement, but I believe that the other communities are going to be looking to provide space within their own community as well, so that they'll be able to react to emergencies in their community, and then we'll be kind of the central hub, I guess we'll say.
That is correct. So each community in their fire hall or separate space will providing locker space. As Bulkley, the Smithers and Telkwa portion is the largest portion of volunteers. We have around 40 volunteers. That's why the space is required here. Smithers just has the largest majority of members, where Houston, Whitsett, Grand Isle will have 3 or 4 or maybe 5 volunteers, and there'll be a space provided in their community for them. This space really has to do with just the bulk of the members, which are in between Smithers and Telkwa.
Okay, just a couple of comments. I think in terms of community support for ESS, I absolutely support that. And maybe it's just a little bit of nuance, so maybe I didn't quite understand where Councillor Ray was going with the provincial downloading. I think in times of emergencies, the best response is citizens helping citizens. And I think that's what I see in the ESS program, is it's a time to pre-engage with people about whether or not they want to help each other when the chips are down. And I think that's probably the best response we have. And the fact that we're getting it organized with a little bit of direction, but you know, it's always the helping your neighbor that means the most. And I think people respond to that. So I think I don't actually have any problem as a community backing that because we're seeing our citizens step up to that. So I think that's kind of a magical response. I'm having probably more difficulty just in deciding where things should go. And just some questions on the EOC, because this bit about the highest point in town has been this sort of little North Star for as long as I've been here. But I'm not sure that we've ever sought anything else. So we use this building when we need to. It's been used a lot, this room. We hope we never have the situation where we actually need to be that 2 miles from the tracks. But I don't know how long you've been thinking about this, but are there other places that could serve as an EOC? Because it's two things to this. I've seen the work that's been done when we've had to have the reception center set up, and we have some good spaces for that. So what I've seen over in the church, if I could remember what the name of the street is where the church is, that's a really great space and it's been used well. And that's using the resources of community, which also speaks to why I support this. So what's the real, except that you have an antenna with communication, why is that the right spot?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have, in years past, myself and Keith Stucco and other previous fire chiefs have spent some time looking at different facilities. There just aren't any other great facilities that can be permanently set up as an emergency operations center. We did think about the Christian Reformed Church we've been using for emergency support services. However, it's not very good practice to have the reception center in the same place as the emergency operations center, because the reception center is a very public space. There have been very many times that are documented well where having that EOC in such a public space has negatively impacted staff working in the emergency operations center. There's some very close to us where things nearly became an issue where law enforcement had to get involved. So it's the best practice is to have the EOC away from the general public, just for safety reasons, also for operational reasons. We also looked at the Bulkley Valley Christian School, which has been a great partner for us. But again, that's our backup that's not our backup, pardon me. That is our main location for emergency group lodging. Again, it's not very good practice to have the reception center group lodging in the same place. Group lodgings where people are trying to sleep during an emergency when there's no other housing. If the reception center is in the same space as that, it's almost impossible for people to get any kind of rest at all, because it's just there's so much movement. And we've seen that in Prince George and Kelowna, Kamloops, Abbotsford, those other examples of large reception centers in the same spaces as group lodging. So those two are kind of our backup backup locations for the emergency operations center. We've looked at the fire department as well, but again, having fire trucks in, out, staff, or not staff, sorry, but volunteer firefighters operating in that space, trying to use the upstairs if they're trying to get some sleep if we have long operational periods. The fire hall is also not an ideal location, and it also doesn't have the space to have 40 plus people in an EOC. So after doing a lot of investigation, looking at the exclusion zones for different dangerous goods, it came to the realization that Ranger Park really ends up being kind of our last really good option for where a safe EOC would be for staff.
Sorry, did you say something, Chief? Use your mic, Chief.
We can finish this discussion. I did want to put one thing in as an option, but I think you can sum this up if you have any other questions on this.
It's just one other comment, and that was to sort of the permanent EOC. And I'm not sure I'm convinced of the need for a permanent EOC, because that to me describes a room like this that's held static all the time for the times we need it. And, I hope we don't need it all the time, but I mean, would we want to hold a room like this for 365 days per year? Can we actually make that case? I'm not sure I'm feeling that yet. I understand when we need it, we absolutely need it, but do we need it 365 days a year?
Thank you, Mayor. Wrong choice of words. A designated EOC is a more appropriate word. I misspoke.
That helps. Chief, and then Frank, Councillor Ray.
So the one thing I was gonna add, especially once we have sorry, I'm stuttering here. Once we have the top floor that we want to put the EOC actually set up, and the access and egress is up to code, which is something that you guys have already discussed, that there is some issues around that. There has been discussion that that could potentially be a space then that could be used by other community groups in a short term, like for use, barring an emergency happening that day where that would end, but there would be some opportunity potentially around then having that space be usable for other groups as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ray.
Just a question through to staff. So if the EOC is there, is the EOC also going to be able to use by town staff if town hall is unavailable because of an emergency? Obviously, the EOC would have to be operating, but I think part of the rationale back in 2012 was that the town of Smithers also needs at least somewhere safe with, you know, backup servers or something so that the town operations could continue to run as well. Is that part of this plan, or is it strictly an ESS EOC?
Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you very much, Mayor. With respect to additional data servers and additional backups in terms of the IT side of things, and we have that available through us through the RDFFG, and they're not housed in the town hall anymore. I'll defer to Mr. Herzog for the remainder of the response.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yeah, the comment you're making is actually exactly what we've been kind of looking at for a business continuity plan for the town of Smithers. So yes, if we, staff is correct about the service being off space and being able to access that through RDFFG. But if the EOC was not fully, we could be at a level 1, level 2 EOC and still have a space for staff to operate if this building went down. So it is absolutely a possibility that we could investigate through the CAO.
Yeah, I'll just kind of build on the comments made by both Mr. Schroeder and Mr. Herzog. Yeah, the intention for the dedicated EOC space would be have that multi-purpose or multifunctional space that would be oriented towards EOC use, which is when emergency happens, you really want a space that is going to be functional in that emergency situation, have all your materials there versus driving around the community trying to get necessary resources together. But also to have that space that could be used, you know, suggested for potentially, you know, programming for other organizations or, you know, potentially for additional space for the town of Smithers. And certainly, as was mentioned, that continuity if there ever was an emergency, which hopefully we don't experience here in the community, but certainly would provide opportunity to kind of start reinvigorating our town business.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got the recommendations. I appreciate our committee. I'm going to ask one more thing, and I don't know that I need an answer tonight, but when we had a similar conversation with Bulkley Valley Search and Rescue, who described exactly why that was the right spot to be. And we did have some feedback from the neighbors about, you know, is that the right space for an emergency thing? In that case, it was more about trucks coming and going, but if it was an EOC during an emergency, it's going to be a busy space with lots of traffic in a residential area. And we ended up providing space at the airport for search and rescue. And so the question, I don't need an answer, but it's sitting with me right now, is we own that land. Is that an adequate spot for all of these? Is there any reason why the EOC has to be sitting physically within the town, this sort of tight part of the town? We have a lot of space there. Is it something that could sit at the airport, which is not adjacent to the railroad? It's not in the floodplain. So I'm just looking for other options as well, so that we have actually looked at everything before we come to the final decision here. So if there are thoughts, I'll hear them. And otherwise, I'm just putting it out there. Like, what else have we looked at before we come to the same sort of dilemma we're going to face with that residential part of town if we start building more and more things that could be high traffic? And I think people are very forgiving in an emergency, but this is the opportunity we have to look forward. Okay. Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, the airport location would be completely fine. The issue is right now, the facilities at the airport wouldn't support an EOC. So the problem is more so there's no problem with location, but then we're looking at constructing something is more so.
Yeah, no, I saw that gap, Mr. Herzog.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to the point about traffic, if it's an emergency operations center, so on the ESS portion, it would only be used for evacuees for small emergencies. Larger emergencies, all that traffic would go to the Christian Reformed Church. And for the emergency operations center, it would just be the traffic from staff going in and out. There'd be no fire trucks, or if there was a fire truck, it would be our command truck that would go in there. So if there's any questions from the public regarding traffic, I would just like to alleviate those and that there wouldn't be a lot of traffic coming in and out of there other than just staff.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. I appreciate it. Okay, I think we're there. Councilor Ray.
I'll move the recommendations.
Okay, committee, I'm reminding myself we don't need a seconder. Any further comment? Sure, I just have to get to the right page. Any further comment? Councilor Ray?
Just because the delegation's here, it does say in the report that it's not going to be able to share space in the basement. And having seen all the equipment that's stored at the fire department in the fire, I can absolutely support that with my own observations. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Thanks, Councilor Ray. Because we're going to go back to 6.1 after this, and we're looking to staff to provide us some information. This is, if this passes, the recommendation that's in front of us, it's going to provide some direction from staff. And the next recommendation, if it passes, is going to provide other direction to staff saying to come back with us on a report. So, and we're going to get these at our next council meeting. So I just want to place out there, I'm interested in seeing the information in response to 6.1, considering 6.2, because we do have a group that is now functioning there and has been for a while that is going to face limitations as a result of this. So I don't quite know how to do that, so I'm just saying it out loud. And if there's no other comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously, Ms. McKinley. And let's go back to 6.1. Yes, you may. Okay, so we'll just take a quick break. Come on back as fast as you can, just with people in the gallery. Sorry, folks, we just got a 2-minute Okay. So we're back in order here. And going back, please, to 6.1. Which is just on the agenda page. So there's the recommendation from staff that we direct staff to report to council with more information regarding the delegation's request. So with the motion we've just made, we've started going down a certain path. So what's your pleasure, council, with this? Councillor Patterson.
If you're looking for a motion, your worship, I'd make the motion.
You're going to move the recommendation, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, okay, and once again, we're in committee, no seconder. So I'll just hold for a second. Any comments, questions from council first? Councillor Wright.
Well, you know, when I look at the last resort concessions, I mean, I'd be interested to know retaining the small back room, is that possible? I'm thinking maybe not, but the second permission to build a greenhouse / storage shed, you know, I haven't been supportive of even putting the other childcare facility in the park. The more stuff we put in that park, the less of a park it is. So doesn't mean that staff can't bring back information if people want, but I'm not inclined to support that. So
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Anyone else? Councillor Raven.
Well, it's there's a lot going on in the letter too, because it also mentions rent increases, the shed that Councillor Ray mentioned. So I'm wondering if we would want to limit it, or if it would be possible to bring back that quickly, considering the amount of information that is there. I have to be upfront and say that I am inclined to agree with Councillor Ray about the shed and the greenhouse, just because even though I did support the childcare complex, it is still a park. And once you start doing outbuildings, it starts to get a bit out there. But yeah, that's just kind of my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Anyone else? Okay, so here's my thoughts for what they're worth. I think I do support getting some information back from staff for the request from the delegation. I'm also interested, just generally speaking, how the decision, like the previous recommendation, affects this. So we have a community group that's been active in a space for a while. They also have aspirations. With the decision in the previous recommendation, we are signaling to this group that your space is finite. And so I think we have to be really clear about that. So if the two other spaces are going to be designated for town use, that's fine. But there is a direction being given to this community group then that you are limited. So I'm interested in having a staff report that is clear about what's going to be left, what we think is possible. So these are our folks that are sitting here at the table. So think about these requests. What can we offer to the group? Let's get the recommendations back for staff so that we're clear when council makes this decision what we're saying. That I guess I'm not in favor of being a bit amorphous about this. So if what we're communicating back is you're in the space you're in and that's it, I want to be clear about that. If there's room for growth for the organization, we should convey that and how. So I just want that clarity in the report that comes back to council when we make the decision. Any other comments? It's a funny face, Councillor Ray.
well, I would just have thought, you know, aside from maybe the question about an outbuilding and that one back room that we have already told them that we're taking up the rest of the building. I mean, it's not a nice way of doing it, I suppose, but at the same time, it's fairly clear there's nowhere else in the building to go.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Any other comments? And as far as the ask, Mr. Yoder is clear, like what I'm saying that I'd like to see back in the staff report.
Certainly, Mayor, I believe that you're being quite clear.
Super. Councillor Raven? Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, we have one more item in our going back and forth out of order. So we are at the report 6.4. We actually, yeah, one more item. The report from Ms. Berriman on the economic development plan. Ms. Berriman.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the draft economic development plan. I just want to advise that the purpose of having the plan is because the town didn't have an economic development plan, and it was one of the strategic priorities identified in the council's strategic plan. And we needed a plan to guide decision making and to use as a decision making tools for economic development activities over the next 5 years up to 2030. So I'm just going to go down. I'm just going to go through the report pretty quickly. You'll see on page 2 the vision at the top of the page. I just want to highlight why that is a proposed vision. It's because Smithers is a people-first and lifestyle-led community. We have the highest number of PhDs per capita in BC, following Victoria. And Smithers is the economic recreation and cultural hub of Bulky Valley, hence the reason where ambition meets adventure, but open to suggestions on that. So I'm going to go down a couple pages. Well, I may need your help with this, please. If you wouldn't mind going down another 2 pages, please. There. Thank you very much. So various existing town plans were reviewed when drafting this economic development plan, including the town's OCP, council strategic priorities, previous business walk reports, the active transportation plan, the childcare plan, and many more as listed on that page. And our consultant, Ryanick, also analyzed the most current statistics available to help identify direction and possible action. Data on that you'll see in all the statistics that we've pulled on this plan have come from 3 sources, namely Census Canada, BC Government Statistics, and Lightcast 2018 to 2023 for the key sector analysis. So Lightcast is a comprehensive labor market data tool providing a snapshot of the Canadian economy. Data is updated twice a year, so it's fairly accurate and updated. Well, if you wouldn't mind going down 1 page, please, just the process there. That's awesome. Thank you. We were afforded 3 opportunities to engage with community stakeholders, namely 2 in-person workshops and 1 online survey to gather community ideas of what the economic development plan should include. And when developing the economic development plan, we considered the feedback from the community, direction of existing plans, as well as statistics to create the goals and actions to support the economic vision. Will, would you mind going down a page, please? There we go. Thank you. These themes, after analyzing the community feedback from both engagement sessions and the survey, emerged. You'll notice most of the themes on the left-hand side of the page tie in with question 23 from the online survey, which also helped develop the goals and actions. So you can see people wanted community well-being, they needed economic resiliency, business expansion, and land efficiency were really, really key. There we go. Perfect. Thanks. Well, the next couple of pages delve into the key sector analysis, and we've highlighted key sectors in Smithers. And these sectors have significant presence in Smithers and have experienced growth over in the last 5 to 10 years. So these industry sector statistics were calculated, it's high level, by a multiplier of the number of jobs, whether it's jobs gained or jobs lost, the average wages, and the economic activity per sector. Well, if you wouldn't mind, there we go. You can see each of the 8 key sectors over the next couple of pages. We can chat about it in more detail a little bit later. And 1 down again, please. Add another one, please. There we go. So our objective is we want to ensure that Smithers continues to diversify and grow the local economy and to ensure that we remain as the economic hub for the region. Interestingly, a number of the communities in the north, including the regional district of Bulkley and Chaco, have reached out to me, and they are wanting to update the economic development plans either this year or over the next 2 years because of the downturn in the forestry sector. So based on this, we want to ensure that Smithers ECDEV plan is diverse and covers various sectors, which I believe it does. And then if we go down to the goals, which is another, there we go. These were the main goals that we derived from the themes, from the community feedback and the survey. 5 strategic goals based on the theme. So the 5 strategic goals, sorry, are to pursue economic diversification, to secure additional land supply, to enable investments, business retention and expansion, to market Smithers and investment opportunities, and to enhance the services we currently have. The goals are then broken down with more corresponding actions on, so for each goal, if we go down to the corresponding pages, you'll see the goal and the action related to that goal. And then we can just go down about 6 pages to the action plan. One more, there we go. So this action plan is a more detailed plan of the goals. The actions are prioritized, detailing timelines and required resources. So you'll see there's a priority, whether it's medium being 2 to 3 years, short being a year, your timelines 1 column across, and also the resources, if it's going to take a lot of time, is a moderate number of time or a lot of staff time to actually achieve that goal. And the resource costs, again, it shows there whether it's less than 20,000 up to 100,000 or more than 100K. There are a lot of blank items when it comes to the cost. A lot of that can be done in-house, and the only cost involved would be staff time, so not actually theoretically money. And then whether it's the town plays a role, if we implement it or we initiate and another organization implements. And that action plan is intended to be a living document over the next 5 years, which monitored as well as, and it will be communicated to the community through SAM, as well as to the business community through the economic development newsletter, and reports to council on an annual basis. And we'll be able to look back at it to say what is working and what isn't working. Our next steps are to provide, for you to please provide feedback on the draft plan, and I'm open to comments and suggestions. And depending on council's directions, changes will be made to the plan, and we will be given to the public and to the business community for feedback for a period of 1 month before being brought back to council. I'm opening the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Berriman. And council, questions, comments, feedback? While people are thinking, I just have one similar to with Ms. LeBlanc's. You're going to do the public engagement, so there's time as well for council to look through and provide feedback. It doesn't have to just be right now.
Correct, a period of a month.
And so the intention is to have this is January, so kind of by the end of February, early March, back to council?
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay, any immediate feedback? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm always looking around. I'm like, who else is going to go first? Again, just another excellent report, really well written, clear, actionable, really love the actionable, and easy to digest. I know this is going to seem nitpicky, so I apologize in advance. I'm just curious around the rationale as to why the cover photo was chosen. Just to me, it didn't feel like reflective of our local economy. While there's obviously a strong agricultural community or economy within the valley, to me, it wasn't clear maybe that was what it was representing. It just appeared to be someone's home. So just question around that. I know we talk about branding. Really liked the vision. I thought that was really interesting and very creative. And I'll be looking forward to feedback from the community, especially now that we're thinking about using IAP2. That's very exciting. Very excited about that. And just question of interest based on your definition of community well-being. I'm thinking about that linkage to the community safety well-being group and how we're actually exploring what that means to our community. So I was really fascinated, and that was the top piece of feedback that came. So I'm just wondering if you could expand on that. And my last question, I promise, and I can repeat these if needed, is I was just a bit confused by the cost column being blank based on the description that was provided. So for example, I'll just pick on one, the visitor center being blank, as I would imagine that would have a significant cost. So if you could just expand on that, just a little bit more clarity would be great. Thank you.
Ms. Berman.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson, through you, Mayor Attrell. To answer the first question on the cover picture, just a generic picture. We can definitely change it. We're just looking at various options to try to showcase the broader community as much as possible. There are some really good photos that we have had taken, so for sure we can change that. To answer the question on the well-being, the community well-being, it was just a generic question that the community wanted, whether it was on safety, on just the economic growth of the community, on the business well-being. And that was, yeah, it was just interesting. I can delve more into that if need be. I'll have to kind of go through the notes that were taken during the community surveys on that. And then the cost column for the visitor center, that is basically my time, which I say that is the cost to come up with looking for a new building. But then once, or funding for a new building, once we actually apply for funding, then there'll be a cost involved. So that is basically my time for looking for funding. If you understand what I'm saying, it's basically all the cost ones is not actually money that we outlaying now, but there'll probably be money later on that we have to outlay. But for that, it's just looking for funding or our options for a new visitor center. If we find another building, for example, for a new visitor center, that won't cost us money at this stage, looking for that new building. But once we get the new building, or we actually have to build a new building, that would cost us money. So that's just kind of defining that cost.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I guess I would just look to the table to see if maybe I was the only one that was just confused by that, because that happens often. Just thinking about when we engage with the public, will they need more clarity on that? But if it's just me, then I'll just leave it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ray, did you have your hand? Go ahead.
Yeah, so is the first question I have is given that placemaking was the lowest proportion of answer to question 23, I believe it was. I'm wondering why one of the ones with $3 signs and a couple with 2 are still under that placemaking. Just wondering why we're prioritizing dollar spending on one that wasn't as important to folks that were surveyed.
Ms. Berman.
So Councillor Ray, thank you very much for the question. Correct, but I think it's also working with internal resources within our organization, such as our recreation coordinator. It will be also their time looking for community placemaking and events and things like that. It's not necessarily a huge time constraint. The main one would probably be just time. There you go with the Smithers Public Library building design. That's going to take quite a bit of time looking for that funding, working with them. But that is quite a priority in the community for a new public library. Like wayfinding strategic plan, again, it's working with development services. It's the whole team looking for options for wayfinding and implementing a plan. Hence the reason that was there, but it's not necessarily specific to the time of the economic development officer. A lot of these are, but yeah.
I was actually referring more to the dollars than the time, because I do see that the time's less, but a couple of the bigger dollar ones, like that wayfinding strategic plan, is over $100,000. So I was just wondering why we were making that a priority when it didn't really seem to be a priority to the community.
Ms. Berman, Mr. Doerr wants to jump in. So Councillor Ray. we'll go to Mr. Doer.
Yeah, so just touching on specifically the wayfinding strategic plan, that's an initiative that a lot of communities are undertaking with great success, and it's been identified as one that there's certainly opportunities for Smithers to continue to grow and improve. So with that, I mean, it's placed under placemaking right here, but it's also going to improve or, benefit, the tourism sector. It's going to improve and, grow the community for those that are looking to join the community. So I think it's something that is housed there, but also has benefits going beyond in terms of looking at the dollar values and why it's still a priority, I guess. Does that answer your question or?
Somewhat. And it kind of segues into my next question. It really has nothing to do with the report per se. I think it's a good report. And I think since the last iteration, it's been well improved. But it's just more still that how do we integrate all these priorities with the remaining strategic priorities? For example, it's okay to go look at a tourism center, but is that the building that we want to build first? Is that where we want our time? It's interesting because it's an economic development that it makes sense for the economic development plan to have looking at that building. But if we're looking at building a building, is that what council wants to build first? So it's just that kind of, I don't even know if it's really a question. It's just something that I'm struggling with a little bit as to how we integrate that so that the building, because we can't build 5 buildings at once, the building we're looking for, is it really the visitor center, or is it the library, or is it another building for just town services, those sort of things? So
Thanks, sounds
more
right.
comment.
I have some feedback there too, but Mr. Doer.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. And just touching on that, that's one that we have spent some effort looking at opportunities to be more strategic with our land use as well as our facility use in the community. And it's one that certainly, recently or in the last several years, we're certainly seeing a lot of competing pressure on different uses for properties as well as facilities. So it's one that we have applied for some funding, and certainly it's one that will be brought to council for strategic priority consideration and potentially as a budget item for the 2025 budget process. But we've applied for some funding to develop basically what would be a institutional, industrial, residential, and commercial land strategy. And so that'd be relying on consultants to build off of the work that the town staff has always put in and done a wonderful job on. And that would kind of be that future guiding, visioning document or tool, I guess I should say, not document, to help support these decisions. But I think even as we're hearing and seeing tonight with discussions around Ranger Park, certainly there's a lot of competing pressures, and with conversations around, competing desires to build, whether it's, the visitor information center or some of the other facilities, we're hearing from the community that it needs, spending some effort to develop that strategy will be positive for the organization and the community as the whole, and certainly will better situate us for long-term success.
Thanks, Mr. Doer. I think maybe just to this specific piece, and we'll go back to the table, is what we're seeing in this document in front of us, I think, is what was reflected by those who participated in the economic development planning sessions. And so we have a draft in front of us that is going to go back again for more community feedback. So council as well has opportunity to feedback. The other piece on, whether we make a decision soon or not soon on a visitor center, we're also facing pressures on that building in other ways. So I think even if it hadn't appeared in this document as one of the potential projects, it's going to come to council because there's needs for that building just in the current life of the existing building. So we're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. Whether or not that translates into something bigger yet is to be seen, and council would have, to have to make that decision. At the same time, we understand that out of Mr. George's department, we are working on the Central Park plan as a subset of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So a whole bunch of information is going to come to council with some decision making. But I think what I'm finding positive about this is that we're seeing a reflection of what the community has said so far. And the community is going to have an opportunity to take a look at it and put feedback in it as well as we are. And then we'll see what this final document looks like. And it is a guiding document where we'll have to combine the reality of the day with the decisions we want to make. So I think there's lots of opportunity yet for council to lift a priority. This is going to provide direction to Ms. Behrman and others in the organization on what do we think the community wants us to work on. And I think that overarching way of doing things is great. So I think there's much in here that, you know, like the presentation is great. I'm not necessarily surprised by some of what I'm seeing here as being identified as important sectors in the community. The numbers of where they sit, I mean, I'm a bit ambivalent about that. I'm not surprised by what's sitting here. I think one sector not here, and Councillor Ray, you identified it the other day, would be the value of being in a community supported by regional government. Health and wellness is in here. I think education is another piece, but we're not seeing every number. So we've got number 4, number 6, number 11. So there's probably other things in here that haven't risen into this document. But I think it's providing a guiding document that not only our staff will be able to use, but that's shared within the community that can be a bit of a tool going forward. So I guess I'm not at this point particularly, concerned about where things sit on that action plan. This is the first time we're looking at it, and decisions on money are always ours. So when staff decide that, okay, here's something that we're going to have to spend money on, that's a budget decision. It's an us decision. So we'll have involvement at that point as well. So I'll hold it there. So it took up a lot of time. Other council. Okay. Councillor Ray, and then we'll try to wrap it up.
So I do have one more question. I don't disagree with this, but can somebody speak to the amount of staff effort that would be, I see it as a plus staff time for hosting in Minerals North. Even if it could be just in comparison to how much staff time, because we know how much time was put into NCLGA. Is it similar? Is it a little bit less? Just so I kind of have some kind of idea.
Ms. Behrman.
Thank you very much. I think the idea is if we do host Minerals North, it would be similar to what we did for NCLGA, and that's to we'll do through the RFP process is to hire a consultant or an individual or even a event company to assist us with that. So it will be a lot of obviously the Economic Development Officer's time to coordinate, but a committee would also form a committee, and they'll be funneled through the Economic Development Officer through to the consultants or to the staff who will be organizing that, and all those expenses would eventually come out of the budget for Minerals North. So not necessarily internal staff time to organize, but external.
Thanks for that. And I just, I know that they haven't found a place to do it yet this year. I know we shouldn't do it this year, but it's just, it would be a shame to see that happen in future years. So do definitely support it. Was just kind of looking for that answer.
Okay. Thanks. I think we're getting there. Have I missed anything? Thanks, Ms. Behrman and Mr. George, for your work on this, and anyone else internally who worked on this that I might not be aware of. I appreciate the presentation. Someone else said it, but both reports are highly readable and pictures are very helpful. So thank you for including pictures and graphics. And I also liked the vision, snappy, and it says something. So thanks for that. Alrighty, so council, if you have feedback, you know where it's going to go. I don't think we have any late items. Before we move to closed, I will give people, let's do 5 minutes and it's 6:45 and a few seconds. So 6:46, 5 minutes. Go do what you need to do and then come back to the table, and then we'll do the motion to close. So for right now, we'll just do a recess. All right. Okay. 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 Alrighty, so we're back. Thank you. It is 6:52 for the record. And I am going to move that pursuant to section 1992 of the community charter, this committee of the whole meeting be closed to the public to permit discussion concerning one item falling under section 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to the negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or federal government or both and a third party. And council, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. And this meeting is closed.